In this video, I'm going to talk about joint rotations. So the reason why I really like joint rotations is because there is very low impact and very low barrier to basically do them. And so when we are thinking about joint rotations, it's the rotational movement of one joint. We want to try and isolate it because we want to focus it on that specific joint. The rotations can be used before a workout to simply get movement through, wake the body up, get it a bit warm. But it could just as well be used as a daily practice where you are keeping very mindful of what the rotation feels like and simply waking the body up will get it going. And it could be a very nice way to get some motion through the body to then build upon and do more advanced stuff later on. So if I'm going to talk about the honest downsides of joint rotations, it is that it can become boring quite quickly. And so what is good to think about is to try and be very curious about it and see it as a bit of an adventure to see what you can find when you do the joint rotations today. You also don't need to do thousands and thousands on every joint. It could be 5 to 10, maybe 15 repetitions per weight, and then you move on to the next one. But it is a really interesting thing to try and be very mindful of the body, how it's feeling, and what changes over time that you do it as well. I've found with the joint rotations that you kind of need to do them on a regular basis over time to see some benefit of it. And it's not going to be as clear cut as you lifting some weights every week and you increase your weight from week to week and you feel stronger and that sort of thing. It probably is going to be a little bit more subtle, which means that you really need to pay attention to the practice itself, what it feels like, moving through it with a very curious mind, and then over time see how that is changing for you. So I'm gonna show you a few of the ones that I really like doing for the whole body. All right, I'm going to start with the wrist. So if you think of the joint rotations, generally what we want to do is isolate the one joint that we are going to work with so that we can really put focus on that one. So I'm going to put my hands out like this, and then I'm going to explore how high I can go, how low I can go, how far to the outside I can go, and how far to the inside I can go. I can do both at the same time, or I can do one at a time for a bit more focus. And then I am going to move in between those 4 points without bending at the fingers and without moving through the elbow. So I'm simply doing a circle from the wrist only. Here, and I can do the other way around. And I can do both at the same time. And here you can get a little bit fancier. So you can actually work, opposite directions here, or you can work the same direction, etc. The next one is for the elbow. So the elbow joint is a hinge joint like this. So you can't really get too far into this direction. So you can mainly go back and forth like this, but we can kind of promote a bit of rotational movement here, and then we can go the opposite direction. And you can do both at the same time, etc. Shoulders, simply standing, and you can explore here as well. How high can you go? How low can you go? How far forward can you go? And how far back? And then you do circles here. And the tricky thing here is to not move the head, just the shoulders. Then you have the neck. So be very gentle when you're moving the head and the neck here now in rotation. Also, when we are doing the rib cage, and potentially the hip as well for the lower back. So basically what I normally do, you always want to go very slow and gentle. I go forward, I go back, I go sideways, here. Okay, this is what it feels like this morning. I'm going to now rotate very gently here, and then I normally go back. And here. So that felt a little bit tight for me this morning, and that's okay. Next thing is we're going to cross our arms on the chest like this. We are going to now break at the bottom of the rib cage, so we are going to do kind of halfway through the spine here. So we're going to go forward, back, sideways, sideways. And you can choose when you do these rotations for the neck and basically around the spine, you can choose whether you want to do one rotation and then go back, or if you want to continue. I normally start with about 3 to 5 rotations per way, because you can get a little bit dizzy and can feel a bit uncomfortable in the beginning, so easing into it that way is a good idea. Alright, so next thing is the hip. So there is a few different ways you can do this. I quite like the one where you really do the hip movements to really get into sort of the lower back and that sort of thing. So looks like this. So I'm basically, as you can see here, actually using a little bit of a knee bend, and it's going to bend a little bit at the knee as I do this. I like to do this a little bit more freely instead of super strict. Yeah. But you could also do a movement of the hip that is unilateral, which I quite like also. So I would place myself, I'll show you here. I would place myself with a weight on this side and then just supporting myself on the other one. And you can hold on the hip, and this is going to sound a bit terrible, but it's more or less like this hip that you're working with, because it's a ball and socket joint, it kind of is like a mortal. So you're basically grinding in the groove here. It's not going to grinding and it's not going to hurt your hip, but that's kind of what you can imagine as you're moving through this circle here, rotation. And you can go the opposite way. And like I said, there is probably going to be some movement going through the knees, ankles here, but the main focus is supposed to be on the hips, okay? Now I'm going to go down and show you some stuff on the ground. Okay, so we've done from basically hands, head down to the hip now. So we're gonna have a look at the knees. I really like this version here where you are sitting down, you are hugging your leg here. And then there is two things we're gonna have a look at doing. So first thing is turning the foot out, bring it up as high as we can, bring it into the inside, go down, out, in, out, in. And then you can do the opposite. You can start on the way in, or turn in with the foot. You go up, you go out, down, you go in, up, here. Cool. The next thing is, obviously you get some motion through the knee on this one as well as the ankle, but then you can also just do rotations with the ankle. And the other way around, and you want to try and not use the toes to do this. So those are a little bit gentler version of knee and ankle rotation. I am going to go up standing again and show you some slightly harder variations of the joint rotations. All right, so this is a knee rotation that you can do standing. So go somewhere roughly hip or shoulder width apart, and then you can lean forward and place your hands just on top of the knees here, or above the knees I should probably say, and then you rotate. Yeah. So you go in, you go out, and as you can see, there is obviously movements going through the hip and the ankles here as well. But again, the main focus is on the knees. And then you can go the other way around. Circles both ways. And then for the ankle, what you can do is a bit of a balancing exercise where you're standing on one leg. You go out in front with this one, and then you simply do joint rotations like this here. So that was a few of the joint rotations that I do on a regular basis and that I quite like, but there's many others as well. So if you come across other ones, they are not necessarily better or worse. They're just going to be a little bit different, and different ones are going to work for different people in different situations as well. So if you have any questions, please put those in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope that you enjoy the joint rotations.